After the SSS GD tournament was over, I decided to come up with this video which aims to discuss its views and why it had a lot of bias and flaws involved. So I noticed these issues as the tournament progressed through each day, so let me describe and explain to you them. So if you hadn't noticed yet, the SSS GD tournament is actually very biased. So for one, battling against one another with levels that have already been done by both players are part of the tournament rule set. And this very rule permits a bias that does not consider the time frame in which the allocated level is done. As a result, one side of the battle gains the upper hand in the tournament, and the battle inaccurately assesses the abilities and skills of the players. Here is an example. So imagine a scenario where you have beaten Bloodbath 3 years ago and have not touched the level ever since. However, you are battling against someone who just recently beaten Bloodbath yesterday. So who do you think will win? Is it you, who has never touched Bloodbath in the last 3 years, or the person who has just beaten Bloodbath yesterday? So the answer is, of course, it will be the person who has beaten it yesterday. And this is quite evidently illustrated in the tournament itself, where, for example, Matt SG has beaten Bloodbath 3 times, as mentioned by Matt SG himself, and while Rozz has only beaten it once. And in another example, Hubsoject has beaten Supersonic literally the previous day of the match, while Rozz didn't, and this gives Hubsoject the upper hand. Hence, to reiterate my point, the bias involved here is a lack of consideration of the time frame of which the levels are beaten. So for 2, throughout the tournament, levels that were showcased in my videos and off recording are actually recommended by people themselves, such as Dr. Quasi and myself. So let's use Windy Landscape by Woogie as an example. Recommending levels is actually committing a personal bias because it is a personal preference which can provide me an unjust advantage of liking the level, in this case Windy Landscape, while the other party may not like Windy Landscape, hence making the matchup inaccurate in assessing the two participants' skills. So hence, to reiterate my point, the bias committed is recommending favorited levels. For 3, the time limit in each matchup was an issue I felt that needs to be addressed. Each matchup is given a tallied less than 20 minutes match, and because 20 minutes is such a small time frame, it would be safe to consider the time limit a bias since it could cause an inaccuracy in measuring the participant's skills. So here is an example to illustrate my point. Person could be low at learning levels initially, but quickly speeds up when he or she is getting closer to completing the level in normal mode. By giving them a time limit of 20 minutes, it limits their ability to showcase their skills in the game simply because learning speed does not equate to skill. However, I do acknowledge that there was a time constraint because all of us participants simply have no time to play the level for hours on end, so therefore completely resolving the bias will be difficult. Lastly, levels with high object counts such as White Space, Boomslayer and Void Wave could hinder mobile players from showcasing their best abilities as players, which then produces inaccurate results. So there are a couple of solutions I would like to propose just for consideration, and perhaps better yet, a practical implementation for future Geometry Dash tournaments. One solution I would like to propose is to ensure every level that is to be part of the matchups to be completely undone by the player. This means that if both battling participants have not done Red Skill by I am Rozz, totally not self-promoting here, the level is preferred to be selected compared to a level like Deadlocked, where both participants have already completed. With levels that are completely undone, it could completely eliminate bias. Another solution I would like to propose is to completely randomize level selection. Rather than have levels that are recommended by players themselves, which can commit a personal bias, randomizing levels can eliminate this bias. It can be as simple as choosing a recently rated Extreme Demon on the condition that you do not know what is in the level, what type of gameplay is in the level as well, or using a random number generator to choose the demon level from the star rated list. In this way, players can battle against one another playing levels that they prefer at an equal chance. So for instance, if you were to say that if you were to pick ACU and Hypersonic, and there's also Thanatophobia, all of these will be chosen at an equal chance. So hence I would recommend the process of selecting levels to be randomized. It is important to consider that the purpose of the tournament is to assess the abilities of the participants, so memory levels and skill-based levels honestly do not matter in the randomizer. They will still be included in the tournament and will not be excluded. The third solution is to at least reduce the third issue I talked about earlier, which is the time constraint per match. It's to have longer matchups, so this is a solution. This means playing a level against your opponent as long as possible. For example, playing for 1 hour reduces bias compared to playing for only 20 minutes. Better yet, playing for 2 hours on the same level and tracking the players' progresses will reduce the bias even more. The fourth solution is to exclude levels that have a high object count upon selection. So for example, if a level like white space has been chosen by the randomizer, the level will be skipped due to its high object count, since it will prohibit mobile players from playing at their best. The next course of action is to play the random number generator again and see what comes up. If it is another high object level, then skip it. Then after this you will perform the same steps until a level with no high object count is chosen. Unfortunately, not everything is sunshine and rainbows. Solutions will not always solve everything, and there will be still some bits and pieces of bias involved. However, the bright side to this is that the bias will be less prominent, which is way better than any extremely biased matchup. But one more limitation I want to point out is that there will always be some bugs present in some levels. So maybe the levels unknowingly have 360Hz or 120Hz bugs, and these can prohibit players from progressing and perhaps can provide their opponent an upper hand due to having no bug disadvantages whatsoever. Special thanks to No One Gaming and Rozz for the discussion we had together about the problems of the tournament. Thank you for watching the video. I hope that this video has been insightful in any way to you, and at least maybe you enjoyed it. So peace out.